Joining me now to talk all about that and much more is the Treasury Secretary of the United States, Scott Bessent. Mr. Secretary, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Maria.
Give us your expectations for this bill, Secretary, and its impact.
Well, Maria, this is what leadership looks like. It's President Trump's leadership united the Republican Party. Everyone had their say, and now everyone's coming together. And look, this is an exciting bill. It combines the best of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act with President Trump's campaign promises for working Americans: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, lower taxes on Social Security, deductibility of American-made cars, along with the president's agenda on the border, on school choice, on defense. And only President Trump could have gotten this into one big, beautiful bill and gotten it to his desk on July 4th. So we are going to sign this and then start the 250th anniversary of our country.
Well, that's very exciting. And of course, we're expecting this to pass today after an all-nighter by lawmakers. But what do you make of Hakeem Jeffries at the podium for more than an hour trying to discredit this bill right now?
Well, Maria, I'm not going to take firefighting advice from an arsonist. The Democrats had the majorities. They blew out the budget. They had the tons of wasteful spending, and we inherited a mess. And under President Trump's leadership, along with Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, we are going to get the economy humming again via the private sector. This is a Main Street Working America bill. It is going to address the affordability crisis. We are going to increase working people's wages. And, you know, the Democratic Party at present doesn't stand for anything. They're just against everything. And let's see where the economy is this time next year. Yeah. I think this bill, over the next year, we are going to see growth like we have not seen, and importantly, it is going to be non-inflationary growth, which is something the Democrats couldn't do.
Yeah, and that growth is badly needed right now with, in fact, weaker than expected jobs numbers yesterday. We were awaiting the jobs numbers this morning for the month of June. Secretary, how would you assess the jobs picture right now, and what would the big, beautiful bill do in terms of creating new jobs in the second half of the year and into 2026?
Maria, as I've said, there was always going to be a transition period from the Biden era of big government spending into the Trump era of efficient private sector Main Street growth, and we're seeing that here. So I would expect third, fourth quarter, we are going to see a substantial acceleration led by Main Street in wages, in business formation, in capital investment. Because this bill, Maria, what's important here is the permanence. We are not going to have to go back to the well and pass a so-called another tax cut. The tax bill is now the law of the land, and what is very powerful here, businesses now have a permanent avenue for full expensing of equipment that they purchase. So I would expect that we will see a business takeoff. Also, as President Trump's trade policies have brought back manufacturing for the next 5 years, if you build your factory in the U.S., you can do 100% deductibility of the structure. So this is the centerpiece of President Trump's three-legged stool for the economy: trade, taxes, and deregulation. So we are working on the trade deals. One big, beautiful bill is the center of the tax deal, and we are constantly deregulating and unleashing American energy, American manufacturing, and letting the American people keep more of their money.
Yeah, this is a huge point that you just made in terms of the deductibility for business, and that is why business managers have told me that it would be a huge shock to the system if this bill does not pass, At this point, people are expecting that this bill passes and they will have that kind of tax treatment, businesses as well as individuals. And that's why they are making their plans in terms of investment right now. I want to get your take on the trade deals, Secretary, because, of course, next week, the July 9th pause is going to be expiring. Is President Trump planning on extending the pause on those tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs, next week when the expiration happens on July 9th?
Maria, I'm not going to get out ahead of the president because he has created maximum negotiating leverage for the trade team, and he will decide. But I would warn any of these countries that think that they can drag this out to be careful, because they could cantilever back up to the April 2nd, the reciprocal tariff rate. But I would expect that we will see a flurry of deals announced over the next few days. There are some deals that are in process, and we'll see. But that's all going to be up to President Trump.
Yeah, I mean, when I spoke with President Trump last week at the White House, he told me that it's unlikely. He doesn't have to do an extension. That, in fact, what he will do instead is just send everybody letters. He was very funny about it. He said, I'm going to send Japan a letter. Dear Mr. Japan, here's the rate you're going to pay to do business in the U.S. Meanwhile, the president announced a trade deal with Vietnam. Just yesterday, he announced it on Truth Social. It includes a 20% tariff on its exports. But the president also suggested a deal could be happening with India, could be on the docket soon. I want to talk about this deal with Vietnam, because I think people are talking about this 20% tariff that Vietnam will pay, but there's not as much, talk and conversation about the fact that we will sell into Vietnam and we're not taxed at all. Is that right?
Well, there's that, Maria, but let me tell you, give you a little inside baseball. What President Trump has done has broken this 20, 30, 40-year cycle of the U.S. being willing to sacrifice our manufacturing base to sell, whether it's Boeing airplanes or agriculture, into countries like Vietnam. So now we have the tariff wall up. We are going to protect our manufacturing base, bring back manufacturing, and this includes substantial ag purchases by Vietnam. So he has broken that cycle that used to be you couldn't have two wins, and this is wins for both. This is a win for American manufacturing, and this is a win for the American farmers.
Yeah, and that's with Vietnam. You also have already announced a deal with the UK. So you've got UK and Vietnam right now done. But recently, the president stopped all talks with Canada because of their digital services tax. Now, Canada came out this week and said, we're rescinding the digital services tax. Where does that leave Canada right now, Mr. Secretary? Because I know that you've got USMCA in place, and, the 25% emergency tariff on non-USMCA compliant goods and the 10% Canada tariff on energy is supposed to resume after July 9th.
Well, so, Maria, at the G7 meeting, President Trump and Prime Minister Carney had agreed to try to get a deal done in 30 days. But unfortunately, the Canadians had put on this digital service tax, which was due to begin midnight, June 30th. And what was really egregious in that tax, was a look back and retroactive taxes of up to $2 billion on U.S.-based tech companies. And the president refused to continue talks with the Canadians until this unfair tax was taken off our great companies, because the U.S. is the center of innovation, and we can't have our innovation taxed because no one else has innovation. So I think with this being removed, that we can proceed on a normalized basis, and we'll see whether the Canadians come with the satisfactory negotiations over the next 20, 30 days.
Okay, so you said we're going to see a flurry of deals likely in the next couple of days. Secretary, would that include India? Would that include Europe? What are you suggesting?
I think the Indians, who are tough negotiators, President Trump has given us a lot of leverage. Maria, what's very interesting, at Treasury, at Commerce, at USTR, the long-term professional staff there is telling us that they've never seen deals like this. You know, people who've been there 20 years are saying these are the best deals they've ever seen. And to get a deal out of India, which has, you know, very high tariffs, is going to be groundbreaking. I'm actually meeting with the EU Trade Commissioner today. We'll see, as I've said, the Europeans have a collective action problem. They're negotiating for 27 different countries. You know, the Germans are interested in autos. The French are interested in agriculture. I'm not sure what the Spaniards are interested in. So, you know, there are a lot of diverse interests there. So we'll see what happens with the EU, but we have a very large trade deficit with them.
All right. Secretary, I want to take a short break, and then I want to ask you about what you're expecting in terms of this bill. Hakeem Jeffries is still at the podium 1 hour later. We'll slip in a short break and then come back with more with Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. Stay